Thank you very much for joining us today, and I can't think of a more appropriate discussion in 2014 and an election year than to have a conversation with you as well as the authors of the book, Fixing Illinois. Now, quite frankly, there's a book coming out, I believe on Tuesday by Hillary Clinton called Hard Choices, and frankly, that might have been a more appropriate title given the problems that Illinois faces. But I'd like to introduce the authors. On my far right is J. Tom Johnson. Tom was appointed president of the Taxpayers Federation of Illinois in 2006, and he became president emeritus effective January of last year. He's a former director of the Illinois Department of Revenue. He served as an original member and later became the chairman of the Illinois Gaming Board. Tom Johnson. And to my direct right is James Nolan. Jim was a senior aide to 3 governors. He's president of Stark County Communications, which publishes community newspapers in central Illinois. He's vice chair of the Illinois Executive Ethics Commission, which oversees the ethics and ethics training of 120,000 state of Illinois employees. Nolan was elected to the Illinois House of Representatives in 1968 at the age of 26. 4 years later, then Governor Richard Ogilvie tapped Jim to be his running mate as the Republican candidate for lieutenant governor. Welcome, please, Jim Nolan. Now, I've read this book, and I encourage you to do so if you care about the future of Illinois. And given what these gentlemen do in the book, it's a series of recommendations or basically even just conversation points. And I had Tom and Jim on my radio show on WGN earlier today called The Sunday Spin, and one of the questions I had was, given all the problems in the state of Illinois, their recommendations only total 98. I said, you couldn't get to 100? And actually, by the end of the show, I think we did get to 100. But I want to address, and it was something I learned from talking to them both, the last chapter of the book is entitled Corruption, an Enduring Tradition. And you explained to me that you made it the last chapter of the book for a reason.
Yeah, we believe, in fact, the Gallup poll just recently did a poll on trust in government, did a poll of the 50 states, and Illinois ranked next to last when it came to the citizens' trust in government. And corresponding to that was also a poll question asked, if you could, would you move from your state? And Illinois ranked first in that regard, or last, whichever perspective you would like to have. And they go tied hand in hand. So we believe that the basic need in fixing Illinois is to address our corruption and ethics in Illinois state government, and as well as local government as well. And I think Jim had a perspective on that as well that's slightly coming from a different angle.
Well, I was just going to add that there's a cost to corruption that we found in a survey of Illinois development executives, 2/3 of whom said that the corruption affected somewhat or a great deal their efforts to recruit business to come into the state of Illinois. So it is a serious problem, not only for the perception, but in a sense for the reality of recruiting business into the state of Illinois.
Right.
But when you have almost what I would say is an acceptance of corruption, that because of the eras, the history of corruption in Illinois politics, that I wonder if it isn't almost, there is an acceptance among people that there's always going to be some level of corruption, and at least maybe we can try to find people with the bar so low that even tolerance is accepted.
Well, go ahead, Jim.
Well, I was just going to note that I teach American politics at the University of Illinois, or used to, and each course I would give an exercise to my students, most of whom were seniors headed for law school. And in this exercise, I said, your older brother has just been charged with a serious DUI. He's in his first job out of college, and he must have a car to do his job. His wife is at home pregnant with their first child, and the savvy lawyer for the older brother says, look, I'm confident I can get this case dismissed if you'll provide me $1,000 in cash beyond my fee. And the question then the older brother asks the younger sibling in my class anonymously is, should he go for it or reject the idea? And consistently across, I think, 7 or 8 courses in which I did the exercise, 2/3 of the students said, go for it. And gives you a sense of what I consider a kind of culture of corruption that too many of us in Illinois feel we should take advantage of government because that's what everybody else does.
So what do we do about this? I mean, it's one thing we know it's an enduring tradition, but what do we do about this? What changes that kind of mentality?
Well, I think we need to take a bold initiative. You know, we've passed what I call nibbling around the edges ethics reform legislation in Illinois, but nothing specific with strong penalties and so forth. If we take on the challenge that we want to fix Illinois, we have to take bold initiatives. And one of the areas we need to take bold initiatives is in the area of ethics and in corruption. And what I mean by that is legislation that people will look at and say, wow, did you see what they're doing in Illinois? You know, Jim made a point that, you know, it used to be cigarette smoking was pretty standard for young people and so forth. And now it's no longer a standard vice. Drinking and then, you know, driving and so forth was okay. It's no longer acceptable in our culture. Corruption can be no longer acceptable, and ethics lapses can no longer be acceptable. And if we create a structure that's the message the public demands of their public officials, maybe we can have the same level of success in this area as we have in youth cigarette smoking and in driving while intoxicated. So we can do it. We just have to embrace it and say, this is what we need to do to address the problems that this state faces.
Give them your suggestion number 99.
My 99. By the way, we've got 98 suggestions in this book. We invite people to add another 99. You know, our email addresses are in the book. Just send us a great idea. I've got my 99th one was this: eliminate all public pensions for all elected officials in the state of Illinois.
Not civil servants.
Not civil servants, not career employees, but elected officials. Now, why do I say that? I say it because, first of all, pensions are really a benefit for a professional core of long-term employees. That's not what elected officials are. I am so tired of reading in the Chicago Tribune or any other media about the story about a public official having committed a crime, pled guilty, and it's taken 1.5 years to sentence a person so they get to draw a public pension for the entire period before sentencing. It paints a broad picture of ethical lapses across everyone that serves the public. And if we eliminated that, give every public official a 5% raise and say, contribute it to your IRA. You're no longer covered by a public pension. That's not what public pensions were created for, or any form of pensions. It's for long-term professional employment. Get rid of it. Why have that cloud hanging over every public official because 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 have ethical lapses and therefore paint an ugly picture for all of our public servants?
Tom, you kind of touched on this, and Jim, I'd be interested in your comment. You note, you know, the history of smoking or drinking and driving, and that almost seems like a generational kind of change. And, you know, one of the recommendations, Jim, in the book is about, you know, teaching ethics as part of high school curricula.
We require 2